Hey, what's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video. Now, if you're struggling with drawing things accurately, a thing that can really help is this kind of an exercise in drawing basic three-dimensional shapes in perspective, following all the rules from your imagination, being able to rotate them at will and drawing them from basically any angle. So in this video, this is exactly what I'm going to show you. We'll start with a very basic cube without taking perspective into consideration. Then we'll put that cube into perspective. I'm going to show you different ways of doing that. And lastly, I'll also show you how to rotate things in your mind's eye and draw them. And by understanding how they're built, okay, you're going to be able to better portray them. We'll also very briefly go over some cylinders, but I didn't want the video to be too long, so let me know if this interests you and I'll definitely do another one in the future. So with that, let's jump into the drawing. Okay, so we'll start exploring some of these ideas, three-dimensional shapes, rotating them in our mind, figuring out what they look like and constructing them. So the main shape that I think a lot of people often learn about is the cube. Now, the cube, the simplest way of conveying the cube is basically you have a square, and that's how many people learn how to draw it, and a cube or a box, it doesn't matter, and another square, and these two are pretty much identical squares, and then you just connect all the corners. And what you see here perhaps is the side that's closest to us. So in effect, you'll have to erase these because these are all invisible lines. Okay, and I'm being extremely simplistic here on purpose. So you get this side of the cube, you get this side of the cube, this side, and this is, for example, the front plane. Okay, now this cube has a couple of problems with it, mainly that it doesn't take perspective into consideration. Let me get my eraser, my needed eraser, it's just so much better. So yeah, this cube does not take perspective into consideration. So what is perspective? I've shown you this and we've talked about it. Check out my other videos on the topic, but very simply, elements that are closer to us are larger, okay, appear to be larger. So if you have a road that's coming out from the horizon line, from infinity basically, it will get wider the closer it is to us. And if there are electricity poles, then they'll get smaller the further they get away from us. Okay, makes sense. Maybe they cast the shadows, their shadows or whatever. So this is perspective. First and foremost, sorry it wasn't centered. First and foremost, objects that are closer appear to be larger. Now look at this cube. If I were to ask you what's closest to us, this side of the cube or this side of the cube? You'd probably say this side because it's facing towards us. At the very least, this line is closer than this line because notice how it moves away from us. But where does that get its role here? These two lines are perfectly parallel. So this part that's farther from us than this part, still this side of the cube is the exact same height as this, and this is the problem. So if I were to put this cube into perspective, I'd go something like this. This is the corner, and let's say this corner is closest to us, okay? So we have a line coming out of it downwards. Now we have this line, okay? Now, this line here should be shorter than this, so I can't go the same parallel line. I have to squeeze it a bit. So you get something like this. You see how these two lines are no longer parallel, but they meet somewhere up there. Okay, it's very gentle, but it's still visible. Now, we have the other side of the cube. So this part is closer to us than this corner. So then again, we have to squeeze it into perspective. Okay, and then we'll cut through here. Okay, now one more important thing. This corner is closest to us. Notice how these lines also have this very gentle fanning to them. Why? Because again, this is closer to us than this. This is closer to us than this. This is closer to us than this. So we have to show this by making these lines slightly like that rather than fully vertical. Same goes for this line here. It's shorter than this because it's farther away from us. So instead of going parallel like this, you see, I'm squeezing it up. Now this is a cube in perspective. Okay, this side is shorter than this side is shorter than this side, and again, I got some of it not fully accurate, but notice how much more dynamic this one feels compared to this one. This is very stout, and especially if you, how should I explain it? Like, let's change the angle a bit. So, again, all the lines are parallel, perfectly parallel, you see here? These three lines are parallel. And it's nice, it's good looking, but it still feels kind of flat, okay? So what happens is, look at this is really obvious. This is closer to us than this. Why? Because we're closer to this side of the cube that's facing towards us compared to the underside, okay? And this means that this corner is closer to us than this. So how come this line and this line are the same length? How come this line and this line are the same length? No, it shouldn't be this way. So let me show you again how I'll create this one in perspective. So this is the corner closest to us. Okay, now out of that, we're going to pull out this line and this line and this line. They're all the same. But here's the difference. Instead of going with the same vertical line for the sides, I'm going to go at a bit of an angle, like this. Okay? Now, let's say the edge of the cube is here. I'm going to connect it, but remember we have this other basically perspective that means that this line that's farther from us than this, okay, this is farther than that, this one. Let's say A is closer than B, okay? This is closer than that. So this has to be, B has to be shorter than A. So I can't go parallel yet again with this. I have to go at a bit of an angle. You see? At a bit of an angle. Same goes for here. I'm not going to go parallel. I'm going to go at an angle. Not like this, parallel, but rather at an angle. Okay? Now this corner is farther from us than this. Okay, so corner, what should I call this? Corner little a and a little b. This is closer to us than this. Okay, so same thing goes here. We can't go parallel here. We have to squeeze it a bit here, squeeze it a bit there. So what do we get here? This line is longer than this line. This line is longer than this line and this line, okay? This is how you put a cube into perspective. Now let's talk about the technical explanation for this. Okay, I'm going to show it to you right here. So basically, if I'll draw like a very small scene, and then what happens is we have vanishing points, okay? So we have 1, 2, and let's say 3 around here, outside of the frame. And what happens is, when we build the cube, it conforms to these vanishing points. So let's start with the corner here. It's this front corner that you saw here, okay? This side, I'm going to connect to this vanishing point, I'm going to connect to this vanishing point, and I'm going to connect to the one here below, okay? Now, look at what happens. So if I connect another line to this vanishing point, and another line to this vanishing point, I essentially got some parts of the cube. Now I'm going to do the same for this line. See here? Or the box rather, it's not necessarily a cube. You see here? All of these lines conform to these vanishing points. So what do we get here? We get a line, another line, another line, another line, another line, another line, another one, another one, and another one. And look at how much more dynamic this cube feels. We can actually tell that this corner is closer to us than this. Why? Our brains can interpret it because these lines converge like that. Same goes for this side, okay? We can tell that this line is closer than that. So this is a case of 3 points perspective. What usually happens is you get the horizon line, 2 vanishing points on that, and the third one is either below or above. Now, when is it above? When we're looking at an object from below. So let me show you this, okay? Now I know some of these topics I already talked about, but it won't hurt to maybe have a refresher. So we get this additional scene. Same goes for these 2 vanishing points. So we have 2 on the same plane on the horizon line, and then we get 1 vanishing point above. And what do we get here? And by the way, we could use the same scene to do that. It doesn't matter though. So we get these, let's just pull out 2 lines out of every vanishing point basically. Okay, So yeah, I'm not as accurate as I wanted to, and the third vanishing point should be really way up, okay? So let's use a lower section here, something like this, and this is the third vanishing point. And now I'm going to connect it to all corners here, you see? And then I'm going to pull out another line like that, and another line like this, and look what we got here. We got a cube or a box, but rather this time we're looking at it from below, okay? I hope that makes sense. So this is the underside of the cube. And this time, this underside is closer to us than the upper side. Unlike this example, where the upper side is closer than the lower side, okay? And again, you could complete this one. If you just follow the perspective, you could see the rest of this cube going like this, transparently, okay? Like it was imagined it was transparent, this is what you would see, okay? Now I hope this makes sense. What I want to do now is go a little more intuitive, okay? Now let me zoom in a bit. So all of this is nice and well, but when you're drawing something, not always will you mark those vanishing points. So I want to use our logic for a moment here. If you look at this very same cube, like here, imagine you're looking at it just dead on from the front, okay? Like so. You will only see this side. So let me show you, what do I mean by that? Here we go, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if it's a cube, these are all going to be of equal length, but obviously it could also be a different type of rectangle or a box, okay? Now, let's imagine in space that what we're doing is we're looking at this rather from the front, from above. So what's going to happen? We're looking at this at an angle from above. So let's see what this leads to. So if we look at this one, we have this line, and I'm going to name the corners just to make it easier. So that's A, B, C, D. So we have corner A and corner B, right? Now, we're looking at it from above. So what happens is this, okay, DC is going to be farther from us compared to AB. Why? Because instead of looking at it from the front, we're looking from above. So this is closer to us than this. So what happens to objects that are farther? They shrink. So it's not going to be the same length. It's going to be a little smaller. Now let's connect these two areas. Okay, so CD, like that. Now what happens to the other side of the cube? Because let me remind you, this is the front plane, okay? And actually let's color it just to make it a little clearer. So this is the front plane, same here. It's the front plane. But now we also have the top plane showing, because if we look from above, you see this top plane. So here's our top plane. Now this line is closer to us than the farther part of the top plane. So what we get essentially is this kind of a thing. You see here? I hope that makes sense. Now this should be shorter, okay? I messed up the proportions a bit, and this is something you have to eyeball because this is a square. I'm looking at it and it felt like this is longer than this, okay? So I shortened it. Now it makes a little more sense. Now let's look at the other shape. So we have the same thing, A, B, C, D. So we have A, B, and they're connected. This is the only thing we basically know. Now, this is longer. So what will happen? It's going to be longer, but shorter here, okay? So again, DC is still shorter than AB, but these lines are longer. So instead of placing it here, we're going to place it here, for example, okay? It's not fully perfect measurements, but it is enough to give us some accuracy, okay? So here we go, and same goes for this side, okay? You see how this line is farther from us than this line, okay? This is something you have to learn how to do from observing objects. You do that, you practice it, you practice with anything that's cube-shaped in your vicinity, but then you have to learn how to do this from imagination, okay? I know it sounds tough for some people, but trust me, it is possible. So let me show you something else that's really cool. Imagine now that we're rotating this cube to the left, okay? We take this thing and we rotate it to the left. So what will happen? If we rotate it this way, what happens is C is going to become closer to us than D. So let's try portraying it. B will also be closer to us than A. So let's start with this line and just rotate it a bit, okay? So we have this line here, that's B, and that's C, down here. Now, instead of this being a straight line, it moves away from us because we rotate it. So if it moves away from us, kind of like that, okay, that's D. Now, same goes for corner A. It moved away from us, okay? Now remember, because of the rules of perspective, this isn't parallel. This gets a little smaller, a little shorter. So I'm going to change the angle here. Let me fix this just to show you what I mean. You see, I made this angle a little tighter, so it goes like this, like a fan, rather than parallel. Because this line should be shorter than this because it goes away from us, okay? Slightly shorter. It's nothing significant. Now, and let me actually make sure that, yeah, I got it a little shorter. So, now, we see the right side of the cube, a bit of it, like so, okay? And again, this line is not parallel to this line. It gets a little squeezed in perspective. This angle is not the same as this angle. So for example, that's A, B, C, D, E, F. So BE is longer than CF. To make it longer, we have to have this line move, you see, a little to the left. Not like this, but rather like that. Okay, now I wasn't fully accurate, and these are very gentle angle changes. You have to really practice this and observe it, okay? Same goes for this back side, okay? Same thing. You see? These angles fan out. It's not the same angle. BE is not the same as A whatever, okay? If it was the same angle, it would be somewhere around here. These now are parallel. That does not happen, okay? So you get this thing here and you start playing around with it, and this is again the front plane. You have to learn how to do this from observation. So we started from looking at it dead from the front, then we looked a bit upwards, okay, so we went something like this from above, and then we twisted it to the side, okay? You have to be able to do these things. Now let's imagine we take this cube and we'll rotate it that way. What will happen? If we take this cube, we rotate it that way, we may be able to see some of the underside, okay, if we look from below. Now, I don't want to rotate it that extremely. So here's what we're going to do. Let's rotate it just a bit. Look what happens here. Corner B, okay? This is here, this is B. Now, if we rotate it a bit like that, okay, this plane is going to become squeezed because we'll see less of it. So let me show you what I mean. Instead of this being this angle for BE, we're going to go at a lower angle, okay? So that's BE. And A, same thing, smaller angle, okay? And you just get started. Whatever you know how to place, you get started with that. Now, this line won't change much, BC, but it will get a little longer. Why? Because you have to understand, look at this line here. Imagine that it's this line. Okay? This is a line. Now, if we look at it from above, it's gonna get squeezed because of the angle. You see, if we look at it from above, you'll see it squeezed. Just look at the pencil here. Okay? Full length, but as I rotate it, it appears to be shorter. If you look at this distance, you see? Longer, longer, longer. Shorter, shorter, shorter. Same goes for this line. Because we're looking at it right now from this angle, and I'm gonna rotate it like that, you see? This is C, this is B. I'm gonna rotate it. It's gonna become a little longer. So if this is where I put B, C, if I wanted the same length, should be around here. Let's make it a little longer. So something like that. Now remember, this BC is longer than AD. So I need to not use that same angle, but rather a little bit more of a squeezed angle. So if I go like this, see the difference? Good. Now you can make it even smaller of a difference, doesn't matter. Now, this line is longer than this line, and also remember that A is closer to us than D. So, and DC is shorter than AB because it's farther. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I know it may be extremely complex. Sorry if it's not a clear explanation. Let me know in a comment down below, and I can try and further explain maybe with a real cube. And then I'm connecting these edges with the same principles, so this is not parallel to this, but rather at a smaller angle. Same for this. It's not the same angle, it's a bit smaller. And you see what we got? We see less of the top plane. I know it's a very gentle change, okay, but look at how you can tell. It's just rotated more towards us. Let's rotate it even more. Okay, so that's B, and that's now it's gonna be really almost fully. No, I'm just winging it. Okay, I'm not going with the full construction I just showed you. Okay, but it will hopefully still get the point across. You see, now you see even less of the top plane, and this should actually flatten a bit. Because what happens is the more we rotate, the distance between us and this is minimizes, okay? So essentially, the similarity between these two lines grows, okay? Because they're of somewhat equal distance from us, okay? Now, if you look at it just straight from this height, so this area flattens, look what we get, okay? So this is B, and this is C. So we get this line here, and then this plane moves away from us, and this plane moves away from us, this plane moves away from us, this plane moves away from us, and you see what we get? We look at it like right now, this is the horizon line, okay? Now the taller it gets, this is the taller horizon line, this is a taller horizon line, sorry, this should be here, okay? You see? Because if you just follow the dots, you see follow this, follow that, wherever they meet is the horizon line. Follow this, follow that, wherever they meet is the horizon line. Same goes for this one. Follow this, follow that. You see how the horizon line, the higher our point of view, the horizon line is taller. And think about it, let's imagine this is a building. If you see the top side, it's like these beautiful pictures, for example, of New York, where you see the tops of the buildings, right? And you see all of their tops, and the horizon line is upper, it's higher, sorry. Now, if you look at something from a lower angle, for example, like this view, here, you see the horizon line is under it. This box is essentially floating through space, you know. Obviously, that won't happen realistically. There's probably something that it's placed upon, okay, just as an example, but you see it's kind of floating into space. Now let's take a step back here and look at cylinders, okay? So far we've been looking at cubes. Now cylinders and ovals also are very interesting and also very simple shapes to work with. So here's just an example of how I'm learning right now to better construct a human figure with cylinders, and by looking at cylinders also in terms of perspective. And there's quite a lot of these things here that I use, just all sorts of cylindrical shapes to convey a three-dimensional shape. Like, look at these legs, it's all cylinder based. So let me show you how we do this kind of a thing. Cylinders, in a way, are even easier than cubes. Let me zoom in a bit. So in a way, cylinders are a little easier than cubes because the perspective is a little easier. It can be a little more complex, but I want to show you because a lot of people struggle with this structure as well. So the basic shape is, if you just imagine like a soda can or you know, a Coke, whatever it is. So this will be the very basic cylinder shape. Now, a lot of the time when people make this mistake of, they see that the top is rounded, but then the bottom they end up doing it flat, but that's just not the way it works. Because what you have to understand is, and try and treat this shape again like it is transparent. So if we look at the side section, it's all gonna look like this, okay? And this is really important to understand. So the way to draw a cylinder properly is, first you want to understand the general direction, okay? So if I have this line here, I can base the ovals on that and sort of trap it within those lines, okay? So first off, there's a line of motion. Next up, I want to draw that oval shape for one of its sides. Now what we have to understand is, do we see this side or this side? Which one is it? Okay, so in this example, we see the top plane, while the bottom plane is hidden, and that's behind that curve, okay? It's behind this. So let's say we do the other way around. We see the bottom. In our case, we can imagine it as the bottom. So I draw an oval or an ellipse. Now you see I'm off. The direction is a little off. So I'm fixing it, okay? And this is the direction in which, this is the line that follows the oval I draw. Because look at this, let's take a break and talk about ovals. If I draw an oval, I can create a line that's perpendicular to the oval, or to the plane of the oval. Now this is something you have to practice, you have to eyeball, so let's do another one, and the center is somewhere around here, and it goes like that. Now there are ways of finding that center, it's not always easy. Now if you look at a circle, let's say it's a perfect circle, we trap it in a box, okay? And that way, by connecting the corners of the box, we can find the center of the circle. Okay, so that's like geometry, I guess. Now, same goes for these structures. What we have to do is find these two lines, okay, that are perpendicular to one another, and then find that third line. It's not always easy. So let's remember I showed you a bit of perspective earlier. So let's say we have the bottom side of a box, okay, and it's in perspective, like that, okay? So this is farther from this, okay? A, B, same thing. C, D. A, B is closer to us than C, D. Now let's imagine we trap an oval or a circle within that, okay? So we have this shape here. This is the center, by the way. And if we trap it, remember, it needs to meet the centers. Now, how do we get the centers? Out of the corners, we pull another line, okay, that conforms to that same perspective. Now it's a little complex, but try and follow. Same goes for this. So we have this line, something in the middle. And what you'll notice is that this half is actually longer than this half. Why? Again, because of perspective. Things that are closer to us appear to be larger than this. It's the same as the example of the road and the power lines, you know. So the farther they are, the smaller they appear. Same thing for this. This is closer than that, so it appears to be larger. Now the circle will meet these middles, you see, like here, of the square. So here we go, meets this middle, this middle, this middle. And you see here, so this is the oval or circle we got, and this is the line that's 90 degrees to this line, okay? It's perpendicular to this plane. All of this thing that I just showed you, you need to practice doing in your head. It's not easy, but with time you'll get it. So when you draw these ovals, you try and find the center point, and out of that pull out that line, okay? So when this video gets a little longer, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap it up after cylinders. I wanted to do some pyramids, but I think it's too much for one day. Okay, but whenever you're confused about an oval, so you see this kind of a thing, try trapping it in a box, and that can help you figure out the center point, you see? And out of that, pull a line that's perpendicular to this floor, the ground plane, okay? So what happens is this: we have a line, then we draw an oval based on that line, so it's the other way around, and we connect it with two lines that are parallel to this line, and we wrap up with a curve that's the same as this curve. So something like that. And we get a cylinder. Okay, that's all there is to it. Now, perspective does play a role. So let's imagine that we're looking at this oval a little from the top, okay? And it goes in that direction, into space, okay? So this is actually, you don't see this part. Now, let's say it moves away from us. So these lines aren't going to be parallel because remember, objects that are farther from us appear to be larger, you see? So this is what it may end up happening, okay? So you get this top plane, bottom plane. If it were transparent, you'd see this part as well, you see? And using these cylinders, you can express pretty much anything. So I've shown this in some of my previous exercises, but let's say, even if you just use an oval, okay, you can express something like a rib cage. So we get this kind of a shape here. the roundedness, this hints that it's turning away to the left. And then if you know the shape and how it's structured, you can build it around that. If you want to do the neck that connects to the rib cage, it's a cylinder as well, you see? Like that. Okay, and you have to realize the shape of the object in space. Okay, it's not always easy. For example, I showed an exercise where I practiced on drawing the spine. And what happens is it has a very interesting shape in which if we look at it from the top, so it goes like this, and then like that, wrapping around the rib cage, so it moves away from us. You see? These circular lines, side sections, hint that it moves away from us, okay, if it moves into the distance. Now, sometimes it will move partially towards us, and I think I have this example. Let me see here. So I actually don't have it in this one. I have it on my other sketchbook, but let me see if I can find something good for you that really showcases that kind of a use of cylinder. It's very interesting. So look at these legs, for example. You see how, and it's a bit hard to see, I know, because it's a blue pencil. I'm going to go over it. So you see how this leg moves towards us, okay? You can see by these side sections how it would look like, but this leg moves away from us, so it goes the other way around, not like this, but like that. Same with the oval. So oval that we look at from below will look like this, okay, and this is invisible, so that's that. But oval that we look at from above, you see, will look like this with these side sections, okay? So I hope this makes sense. I know it's a little bit of a complex topic, and I have been asked a lot to do these kind of, let me zoom out, and I have been asked to do some of these shapes, you know? So look at this as a start. I talked about simple shapes, but here we brought perspective into it, so we can actually treat it as a three-dimensional object within a scene. We did a bit of cylinders. I will expand on it hopefully in a future video because there's a lot to discuss. For example, what happens if the shape, even if you look at this shape, what happens if there is a shape, sorry, I moved the camera. What happens if there is a shape on top of that? So you would get, for example, this diagonal shape here. You know, how do you place that in the way that's accurate and convincing, you see, and that changes the whole shape, you see. And based on all of these shapes, you can structure something that looks like a house. For example, let's say this is the rooftop, and we're looking at it from above, and you see barely any guidelines. You don't need much when you understand how to observe things, you see, and hopefully that's a convincing roof, and it has a chimney up top, you see. So you can do quite a lot just from your imagination, so to speak, if you understand these basic rules. Okay, so let me know if you're interested in more, and in particular what types of shapes. I'll definitely do another one real soon. Well, in any case, now let's wrap it up face to face. So that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed this one and found it useful. Again, rotating shapes in your mind's eye, being able to draw them accurately, and observing the perspective. This is one of the most important skills. It's really crucial very often to just drawing just about any object you look at, whether it's buildings and even people. Okay, these basic shapes matter, and understanding how they work in space and how to draw their side sections, all of those good stuff, they really do matter. Now, I know this is just the beginning. I just got started touching upon these topics, so it's really important for me if you let me know in the comment down below what you want to see more of. I definitely want to cover cylinders in more details, also ovals. It's taking a step back, but they are very important. Ovals and also pyramids, just to give you more idea of the logic behind it, okay? How you can use a few very simple measuring and comparing tricks to understand where everything is. Just like I showed you how to find the center of the cylinder, all of these things, they really do matter, and they're a challenge, okay? So you want to work towards them by observing real objects as much as possible, but understanding why things appear the way they appear, okay? So I'm going to wrap it up now before I start rambling. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you watching the video. If you want to learn how to draw like me, be sure to check out my beginner's drawing course. Also, if you want to learn how to paint, watercolor, I have that. Everything is listed in the description box below, including my books on Amazon. Thank you so much. I will see you again in the next vid real soon.